Hey everybody, how's it going? Josh here, and today we're going to talk about how to fix the Arizona Cardinals. So if we just get right into it, last season rankings, record, things like that. So during the 2018 season, the Cardinals finished with a 3-13 record, which also gave them the record placing of 1 overall in the draft and also 4th in the NFC West for the 2018 season, which is interesting to say the least considering this division also has Seattle, LA, and San Francisco, who has the number 2 pick and went 4-12. So definitely maybe one of the most bipolar divisions in this league of the 2018 season. But Arizona was also the only team to put up less than 4,000 yards total on offense, and they averaged 14.1 points per game, which ranked last in the league. So the Arizona defense, they were definitely a really interesting defense because they were ranked third most total tackles in the league with 1,105 and also tied for the third most sacks in the league during the 2018 season. However, their defense was also ranked 4th for passing yards allowed and 32nd for rushing yards allowed. So again, a very bipolar team in a very bipolar division, ranking 29th in passes defended, while also ranking in the bottom half of the league for penalties, specifically ranking 30th for most penalty yards. So when you hear all that stuff on paper, their rankings and stats, while also watching their game tape from the past season, it becomes pretty obvious what they need to do. And if I had to boil it down to really 3 main organizational goals for this offseason leading into the new 2019 season, the first thing would be revitalizing the passing game through play calling. The second one would be strengthening the O-line, and the third would be improving defense, specifically for the outside runs and also checkdowns, because this defense gave up a lot of outside runs this past season and also just couldn't seem to consistently stop either a tight end or the check down receiver. It was kind of ridiculous, honestly. It kind of started with the Redskins, but a lot of people chalked that up to Chris Thompson just being a really good scat back, while at the same time Jordan Reed being Jordan Reed, one of the top tight ends in the league when healthy. But as it continued to just keep going and going and going, it became obvious that this wasn't an aberration that the Redskins of all teams exposed them for. It was a consistent issue that they just weren't addressing. Transitioning from these goals, talking a little bit more about positions of need, I think you need to build for your division. The first thing you got to do to make the playoffs is win your division a lot of times, unless you want to always go for the wild card. And because of that, I think the Arizona Cardinals need to target an offensive lineman, a wide receiver, a tight end, or maybe someone who could basically play the void of both. And then also either a corner, specifically a slot corner, or a linebacker that can go sideline to sideline. The reason why I say this is because, like I said before, you got to build your team for your division above all else if you want to make the playoffs. Obviously, winning the championship's a different story and a different level of building your team, but at least to build for your division, I think that makes a lot of sense. And if you look at the teams they're facing, at least half the time every season, you have LA, the 49ers, and Seattle. All of them have overall really good defensive fronts, especially LA, and the 49ers might get Nick Bosa, so they'll just beef up their defensive front even more on the pass rushing realm. And considering that Josh Rosen was already getting pressured way too much across the season, I definitely think it would not ever be a bad investment to get offensive linemen. However, while I would draft tackles and guards, I would try to find a center from free agency just because that's the most important of the positions usually from a leadership perspective, since they're the ones kind of calling things in the trenches, things like that. So I would definitely want a veteran center who's kind of seen a few things, has some of those experiences, but of course things like tackles are really important. And with your run game with David Johnson, you also need really good guards as well that he could run hopefully in between and not just get swallowed up for a loss. Now, with the wide receiver and tight end game, that's mostly just because outside of Larry Fitzgerald, there really wasn't anyone electric. The Cardinals have the opportunity in this draft to easily trade back and get a few more picks. They have the number 1 overall pick. There's no reason for them not to be able to do that. So I definitely think they could get some pretty electric receivers in this draft. I think there's some hidden gems here and there. However, they were getting beat a lot in the passing game. So I think they need to focus on getting more pass deflections, interceptions, and as well just stopping other teams from passing down their throats 24/7 on the field. And honestly, this is really possible considering they have $51 million approximately in cap space for this offseason, and I do think they're going to be able to address some things like their play calling, as they fired Steve Wilks, who is more of a defensive kind of coach, and they hired Cliff Kingsbury, who is definitely a more offensive coach. So I think he might be able to bring that new perspective, that fresh angle and play calling, and at the same time revitalizing the pass game for Rosen. And at the same time, they hired Vance Josephs for their DC to really kind of have a consistent kind of glue to get them into the next season, which I really do think would set them on a path for success. I would hire a new offensive assistant, specifically just to help Rosen with adjusting on the fly when the pocket breaks down or when his first or even second read isn't really available. Obviously, someone like Peyton Manning would be like the perfect person for that if he was willing to do some sort of consultancy for QBs. I mean, I doubt he would, but someone like that who has such great QB IQ. Same with like Tony Romo. Those people that have great QB IQs, those quarterback whisperers, so to speak, that's who they really need to give to Rosen. The second thing I would do also is steadily phase out Larry Fitzgerald. He's getting older. He's going to be more, I guess you could say, susceptible to injuries. You need to protect the dude, because the last thing you need is Larry Fitzgerald coming back because he's such a great guy and you guys break him in half because you only want to target him. So I would definitely focus on getting a receiver and kind of phasing his workload out. Obviously, you want him there for the leadership capabilities. Obviously, you want him there to mentor. He doesn't have to hold everything up for everybody on offense all the time. At the same time, I would focus on building the O-line, one, to stalemate the really intimidating defensive fronts you're going to fight in your own division and possibly abroad in the conference. And I would focus on a more fast-paced offense. You have David Johnson as your running back. He's very similar to Le'Veon Bell in a sense where he's just as good of a receiver as he is a running back. Take advantage of that. Don't just run him up the middle 1,000 times. And I know all the Cardinal fans know exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's what I think the Cardinals really need to do that can get them on a good path to really fix their kind of, I guess, season-to-season record. Comment below what do you guys think, and we'll see you guys later.